This is longevity. If somebody could tell me, give me one topic that's more important to know all the science on than how to live longer and healthier, I'm all ears. I'll sit here. If you want to convince me that knowing how to be a master orthodontist is more important than knowing how to live longer, I'm going to debate that. As a board certified orthodontist, you might have your priorities a little bit messed up. So if you know all the literature on everything there is to know about how to move teeth, and you don't know any of this literature, you might want to focus your knowledge a little bit more, because this one's going to hit close to home. Hello there, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Orthopreneurs podcast. You know, if you've been listening to me over the last year and a half or so, you've heard me talk a lot about our fitness goals, health, wellness. You know, there's body, there's mind. But one of the places where we really haven't talked much, but there are a million questions about in the Facebook group, relates to what we bring into our body, about our gut health, about supplements. And today I have the most amazing person we can have here, because her story is great. It's one of personal healing that then transformed into her helping others. And so we're going to have a great time talking today. So I want to welcome to the show, Rhya Pachin. Welcome, Rhya.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
That's my pleasure. And I didn't tell everybody yet, but you are a licensed nutritionist and dietitian.
Yes, correct.
Right. So this is not somebody I found on the street and just said, hey, you know, you're at the gym with me. You look like you're pretty fit. You eat okay? Cool. You mind if I pick your brain? This is somebody who, as you hear from her story, really understands nutrition, supplements, and a whole lot of going on. And I'm telling everybody right now, Rhya, I'm going to put the disclaimer up there right now. There is no way on planet Earth that if we had 3 hours, we would cover this topic in full in a way that people really want. So I'm saying this right now. Number one, if you like this, let me know so we can bring her back and finish the conversation in any number of ways, because in 30 minutes or so, we're not going to get through, but the simplest
just scratch
thing
the surface.
Exactly. And so as she talks, if what she's telling you really resonates with you, if you hear things that remind you a bit of yourself, or you're struggling with issues that you feel you've come to the end of your rope with the medical community and you're on a bunch of medications and you've got chronic conditions that you just don't feel you need to be taking a ton of pills for, she's going to have some opportunities to work with her in different ways that will be available for us to learn more about at the end. But let's start here, Rhya, if you don't mind. I know your story, but if you wouldn't mind taking a minute or two and just explaining to everybody, how did you end up where you are right now?
Yeah, sure. Well, thanks again for having me. So I ended up here through a long journey of going through some personal issues with my whole family has autoimmune disease, different forms, different styles. And I was diagnosed really several times, but initially with Hashimoto's shortly after an ankle surgery. And I think that was my trigger. So if you know anything about autoimmune, you have the genetics and then you have a trigger. Yeah. And so that triggered my body to go into this autoimmune flare, and it attacked my thyroid. And through that process, I was dismissed by doctors. I was told my labs were normal, even though I didn't feel good. I probably gained 15 pounds. It felt like overnight, and everybody just said it was fine. I was in my early 20s, so this was not normal. And I did all the right things. I was eating, I was exercising well. I'd always done that my whole life. And so really struggled to find someone who would listen. I finally found someone kind of in the functional medicine field a long time ago and got help. And then as I came through that, I realized how many people around me were struggling with the same types of things, and how much nutrition and functional medicine principles really were what helped me get to the root cause of my issues, because it's not the thyroid. The thyroid isn't the problem. It's deeper than that. And so finding those answers and then learning to help other people through the right schooling, surrounding myself with the right people, kind of getting, a quick adaptation into the functional medicine world, and then eventually going into private practice.
It's awesome. And one of the things we've had the conversation with Jeff Galvin, who has been on the show before a couple of times, he cited a statistic that the average, primary care physician, when you go to see them, has less than 5 minutes of time to spend with you. And so is it common for you to see folks who've dealt with an issue for decades, and they're just getting in the doctor, getting more medication because that's a quick way to solve it, and nobody's ever really dove deep into it and realized, time out. It's not that you need thyroid medication. It's that you're short on X, or your diet isn't providing this, or I'm going to get into this one because I know it's a juicy thing for you. But the way the current crop of food comes through, the soils
Yeah.
are not what they used to be. You're not getting the nutrients that your grandparents got when they grew it on the farm. The
Yeah.
carrot you're eating is not the carrot that grandma and grandpa had on the farm in Nebraska. Well, I guess there's not many carrots in Nebraska. Let's call it corn. But that's a nutritionally horrible
Yeah.
food. So I'm sorry for
Yeah.
bringing that one up.
That's
But my point is,
okay.
how often do you run into people that you work with who have been in the medical system for 5 years, 10 years? And the answer is just as simple as something dietary.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I feel like I can't say 100% of the time. So let's say 99 just to give some credit there. But yes, I literally wouldn't have a practice if it weren't for those people who everyone who comes to me has said, I feel, especially women, but really everyone, I feel dismissed. I am not having correct testing done. I had to push. I had to tell my doctor what I want them to run, what labs I want them to run. They completely overlook potential nutritional deficiencies. They don't test for them. They won't even test hormones for most women. I could sit here for an hour and tell you the silliest, most nonsensical answers that people have gotten to, I have this pain. I don't feel like something in my body's right. When it comes to hormones and thyroid and weight management, even worse, because we're just getting destructive, discouraging answers, let alone not even getting to the root cause or looking for what really is contributing to this below the surface, when we know that the underlying theme of all chronic inflammation or chronic disease is inflammation, right? And so
Right.
we just are, unfortunately, the traditional medical system or paradigm does not address chronic inflammation well. It deals really well with acute. I wouldn't want to be in any other country if I chopped my hand off or had to have surgery on my heart. But short of those types of situations, we don't have a great way to handle chronic disease. We don't have the right testing. We definitely don't have the nutrition knowledge or mechanisms in place to make good suggestions to help people through those things.
Yeah, I mean, what you're talking about, unfortunately, is exactly what the American model is, right? And
Mhm.
all too often, and let's not put the blame just on the medical model. It's the human as well, right? Because there are
Sure.
people listening to this right now who suffer dramatically with rashes, Hashimoto's. I mean, insert name here of something they just got diagnosed with, right? They're 40 years old. What got them here ain't going to get them there, right? All of a sudden, the body, the
Correct.
immune system changes, inflammation increases, and all of a sudden they went to a doctor, or they realized their pants are a lot tighter, or they're
Hmm.
noticing, a little bit of fat in a place that didn't exist before, or they're not sleeping as well, or Jeff Galvin has his 7 menopausal elves or dwarves. The 7 menopausal, it's bloaty, sweaty. I think one of them is bitchy. Like there's all
Yeah.
these things, and he works specifically with women to overcome this stuff.
Yeah.
And there's two sides to it. There's the doctor not giving the time, energy, and effort or knowledge, and there's the patient. Because how many people do we have as orthodontists? We say, wear your elastics, and they don't, and we're hand tied, right? We're handcuffed. So I love what you talk about women in particular, because I know that's a big cause of yours. Uh,
Hmm.
and I'd love to dive into that a little bit more about, yes, I do believe that even though as a society we've evolved a great deal in terms of women being, I hate to use the word equal, but
Hmm.
equal to men. And we have a long way to go. Let's not kid ourselves. But the idea that you would think that the one place everybody has equal say is in the physicians, right?
Hmm.
You go into the physician's office and you are yellow, green, purple, brown, black, male, female, doesn't matter. The doctor's going
Yeah.
to listen. But it sounds to me from what you're saying that women do face specific bias. Would that be the right
Yeah.
word?
Yeah, I think so.
Specific bias. You mind diving into that a little bit more, and sort of for those of us out here who thankfully I've never felt like I've experienced it, can you explain what it looks like? And then
Yeah.
secondly, where do we go from there? What does a woman
Yeah.
do if she feels the way you're describing?
Yeah. So those women who feel like that, I think, end up in my office or in some way, shape, or form, hopefully exploring the world of nutrition, functional medicine, depending on who they have available. There are a lot of different types of practitioners that do what I do. So there's definitely some overlap, right? But my background is coming into it from nutrition and then kind of putting it together with functional medicine testing and protocols and things like that. And then there are people who come from it from the medical angle, like doctors, who then have to learn the nutrition side. So we all kind of do the same thing. But those women end up in our offices because I think I think it just comes down to, like you said, women are still different. And that's, of course, not a bad thing, but we need to recognize that those differences, we're not just small men, right? And so all this research you've seen come out on,
I've never heard a woman referred to.
yeah, I mean, in
Are
research,
you a
though, that's
man
kind of,
or a
yeah.
small man?
Yeah. In research, though, that's kind of how we're treated, is like we're just kind of small men. Like we're not regarded as different humans. So a lot of medical research that we base entire paradigms of thinking is done on men, like keto, like the carnivore diet, like all of these things. Men do great with it. Women can, but we have to do it differently because we're built differently and we have more complicated hormones that don't always like these really intense restrictive diets, right? And so we just need something a little different. Fasting, perfect example. All the research, 95% of the research done out there on fasting, all done on men. And then we're telling people, oh, just do intermittent fasting. And these women are killing themselves and killing their hormones because they think that that's how they're going to lose weight.
And
So,
they're probably becoming sarcopenic.
oh, absolutely. 100%. 100%. Because they're running on
Which is
cortisol.
only creating a positive feedback to make it even worse, right?
Absolutely. They're just running on cortisol and then they burn out their thyroid. Hello. Ask me how I know this. And so I feel like a lot of the women, this is my, N=1 private practice research. This isn't necessarily something that's out there documented that I'm aware of, but I feel like a lot of the women that develop thyroid problems, they really had an adrenal cortisol HPA axis, imbalance first. And then that drove the thyroid imbalance. So again, the problem's not the thyroid to begin with. But what happens is these, women with IBS or digestive issues go to a PCP or even a GI doctor, and they're often written a prescription for depression medication, anxiety medication. No talk of, what are you eating? Have you tried removing gluten? Have you had, have nothing looking below the surface.
You know why? Because it takes time.
Exactly. It takes time and the testing isn't
If I
there.
say, what's your problem? Oh, I have
Yeah.
gas, bloating, diarrhea, constipation. It alternates
Yeah.
back and forth. I
Yep.
don't have bloody stools, but I'm just not
Yep.
feeling good. I feel bloated all the time. How old are you? 40. Bloating does accompany menopause. Here, try this, do this, and we'll see you again in a year.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
again, that's why I love Jeff, who's in your neck of the woods,
Hmm.
because, you know, spending an hour with a doctor who
Yeah.
cares,
Very different.
spending a day with a doctor who cares, spending 2 days with a doctor who
Yeah.
cares, you come home with a complete different understanding of where things are. And
Absolutely.
that just leads me to the next question, because again, I know we don't have a huge amount of time today,
Yeah.
and I want to keep hitting certain topics because you're such a wealth of information. And I really do appreciate the access we have to you today. So thank you.
Yeah. It's
Um,
great.
let's talk supplements, right? Just
Hmm.
going into supplements. Well, there's two things: supplements and diets, right? And
Hmm.
when I say diet, I don't use it in the term of fad, but
Sure.
how we eat, the diet
Sure.
that I choose, right?
Sure.
Um, there's vegetarian, there's vegan, there's keto, there's intermittent fasting. I mean, there's all these things out there they
Yeah.
can look at. Right off the bat, are there any methods of eating that you would immediately say to somebody, I would stay as far away from that one as possible? Because in my experience, it's been problematic.
I would say that's such a tough
I
question to
know.
answer quickly, but here's what I'll say to quickly answer it is I think a personalized diet is the best, right? So something that we know works for you. I've done every single diet out there myself just because I had different health issues, right? Trying to figure out what worked for me. And so finding what works for you is important. Staying away from, I would say, very restrictive diets. Now, that is kind of a subjective word. It could mean taking out entire food groups, but like you could do keto and still, as long as you're still getting fiber from vegetables, then I think we're good, right? But there is microbiome research that would indicate, a carnivore diet. I don't think we really know yet, right? Because there's
Right.
really no anthropologically, we don't have a lot of data. There's one group of people that I think we know of that eats 99% meat
Who's that
and they're
group?
okay. I think it's called like the Nuwani. They're
Oh,
in
it's
Africa,
an
a
aboriginal,
group of people. Mhm.
an
Yes,
indigenous
like an
tribe
Aboriginal
that,
tribe. Yeah, and they live mostly on meat, but they live in the middle of nowhere, right? They're not it's not a modern society with stress and computers and blue light and all of that.
and
So
they've been doing
I
it
think
for as many
Yeah.
generations back as they can, back to the woolly
Yes.
mammoth,
Yes.
probably.
Yes. And then you have, so we don't have a ton of data on like the carnivore diet, but I think as long as I get a lot of people who come with autoimmune disease and they've been doing an autoimmune protocol, that's a specific diet or really strict paleo for a really long time. And they're mentally not in a good place, right? They're emotionally not in a good
Right.
place. Women, especially, you see deficiencies, you see hormone imbalances. So it's okay to do those things. But then if you have lab work that counteracts what you've been doing, let's make some adjustments. Let's not eat just to say, I eat this label, right? Let's
Right.
eat based on what our body needs and what the data shows is working for us. And so, really restrictive diets, whether it's vegan or carnivore, those both can present problems depending on your genetics. And if you don't know that, then you're sort of guessing. So, let's do labs along the way just to either justify or validate or invalidate the diet that's right for you.
Yeah, it's great advice. And you get to a certain age, right? I'm in my sixth decade of life. Like you, I've done every diet there is, right? I've
Yeah.
done the whole 30, right? Where I've
Yep.
eliminated things. I've done full keto, which is what I'm on now. But
Yeah.
I do bring in fiber through a whole series of different ways. I try to bring in a lot of fiber doing
Yeah.
that, and that's ultimately worked the best for me. But
Hmm.
I've done, sugar elimination diets, potatoes, corn, elimination diet, every single thing that's
Yep.
out there. And like you said, it works really well until someone invites you out to dinner
Right.
or invites you over to their house. And
True.
it's so difficult to do it because you don't really want to be doing it that all of a sudden you give in and you know where it goes from there.
Yeah.
So it's finally gotten to the point in my life where I've really recognized what works for me
Yeah.
and continuing that. Now, the other day I had on this podcast a personal hero of mine, somebody I really love, Tony Horton from
Mm.
P90X
Yeah.
fame,
Yeah. Yeah. Of
and I
course.
love the guy. And I just it was 75% fun and
Yeah.
25% fact. But here I am, I'm talking to Tony Horton, who got me. He transitioned me essentially. But for Tony Horton P90X, I was doing triathlons and I had twins, and they were my second and third kid, and there was no way 7-hour bike rides were going to work anymore.
Mm-mm.
And he transitioned me to indoor workouts where I didn't have to go to a club. I didn't have to go to a gym.
Nice.
I could just wake up, take my pre-workout, and go hit it. And here's this guy who's 66 years old on his own health journey where he's had problems.
Mm.
And he's in amazing shape. And we're two guys within 10 years of each other sitting there talking. And he's telling me how he's a vegan. And part of me is like, God, I guess if Tony's a vegan, I should be a vegan. And if I was younger and less experienced, it probably would have influenced me in a very big way.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I realized I'm really happy where
You're
I
doing
am, right?
good.
My
Yeah.
body fat. The only place where keto doesn't work as well with me is that I do have a familial predisposition to cholesterol issues.
Mm.
And so I take chicory as a supplement. I take red yeast rice with coenzyme Q10 as a supplement. I try
Yeah.
to do everything I can through supplements because when I went on a statin as a test, just to see what would happen, because I do jujitsu, I started tearing muscles everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
Started getting neuropathies. I went to a PT to go get it worked out, and she said, "Stay as far away from these statins as you humanly can, because if
Yes.
you're on a statin long term, rest of your life, you're going to have major problems." I I
Yeah.
I, I hate to put you on the spot, but I'm going to put you
Oh,
on the
it's okay.
spot. What are
Yeah.
your feelings about statins for cholesterol control, and do you feel that you can handle it if you like keto and you eat not a huge amount of red meat, but a little bit more fattier foods? I like dark meat chicken on my keto instead of chicken breast. I'll eat, it's all roasted, nothing's fried, but it does tend to APOB and all this other fun stuff tends
Yeah.
to adjust.
Sure.
What are your feelings on statins, and what are your feelings on other supplements like chicory and red yeast rice coenzyme Q10 to handle those sorts of things?
Well, if you're on a statin, definitely take CoQ10. If your doctor doesn't tell you that, statins deplete CoQ10. That's a
Right.
hugely important pearl that I feel like everybody needs. It should just be stated on the box, but it doesn't.
Yeah.
I have had clients. I don't like statins. They're, when I come into this, I'm coming at it from a personal standpoint, but also I have to work around medicines, right? Because I'm trying to accomplish something that usually medicines, they're not necessarily in the way, but they are going to be in the way of really fully healing in many cases. Like acid blockers, hate them. Statins, hate them because it's hard to see what's going on. I have a client right now on statins who had rhabdo basically because he's working out like a crazy person, but on statins.
I know what rhabdo is,
rhabdomyolysis.
myelitis.
So
But
his
if you explain to
muscle
people
is
what that is.
literally like being broken down by the statin. It only happens in like 15 or 20% of people.
Did you
But
just
he
say
was,
only 15 to 20%?
yeah, I mean,
You mean I'm in a
meaning
room with
that
3 other people and someone's going to shoot a bullet and I could be the
right,
one hit?
right,
That's a pretty high
right. But
number.
it is. I mean, anything over 0 we don't like, but this is how it's justified, right, in the medical community. And
Right.
so, but his genetic background is so I guess so strong that his doctor wants him to stay on it. So we're trying to get off of it. It also he also has elevated blood sugar because of the statin. So and so now I'm
Well, the
tasked,
muscle
right?
breakdown, right?
And the muscle breakdown, yeah,
is right. You're getting
yeah,
muscle and you're getting muscle glycogenolysis, right?
yep,
By the way, to everybody
it's a mess.
listening, I don't know where this is coming from. This is kind of like the Will Ferrell and old school debate moment where all of a sudden this stream of consciousness is coming to me. But I know there's muscle and liver glycogenolysis when you get a
Yes,
rhabdo,
and
when
you can have
muscle breakdown
heart.
occurs. Right?
Yes, and it can
I'm
happen
just
in your
proud of myself
heart.
for
You're doing
remembering.
great. You're doing great. You're
I
pulling
just
out the
move teeth for a
files.
living. That's all I do.
Yeah, no, it's
By
great.
the way, I didn't know rhabdo could be a chronic condition. I thought it was really more from
Well,
acute
it can
workouts.
happen in the liver or the skeletal muscle or the heart. And so when your heart muscle is breaking
Interesting.
down, that is very dangerous. So yeah, so we're dealing with that and trying to work around it. So I don't
So
like
he's got blood
statins.
sugar issues
Yeah. So
and
now
he's
he has
got
it's basically like type 2 diabetes because of the statin. So now I'm tasked by the doctor. This is their favorite thing to do is be like, oh yeah, what we did created this. Can you fix this now? And I'm like, I'm going to try. I mean, we're doing basically low carb and, working around as much as we can, lots of supplements to try to fix it. Vitamin C can also help with the rhabdo and kind of bringing down his creatine kinase is a lab marker you look at, and it's very elevated. So we're doing what we can, but to answer your question, I don't like statins. They're very challenging. There are going to be rare cases where the familial risk, or if somebody's already had a heart attack, right? Those could be medically, I can't give medical advice, but medically speaking, those could be situations where where the benefit outweighs the risk. But in many cases, it's like, oh, you turn 50, time to go on a statin for no other reason.
right.
You're not getting lipid particle tests when you go to your PCP. You're getting a generic total cholesterol, LDL, VLDL, HDL. They are looking at the ratio, but some doctors don't even really know how to interpret that or what that means. And
And by
so
the way, people are
yeah.
married to those
Oh,
numbers because that's what
absolutely.
they've heard their whole life. My LDL, HDL,
100%.
I'm like, if you only knew how unimportant your LDL,
Exactly.
HDL numbers are in today's
Yeah.
world. Jeff
Yep.
Galvin, when he was on the podcast, maybe he might have done a webinar from our private mastermind, the RD group, but he talked about the beach balls, right?
Yeah.
There are
Right.
big beach balls
The
and little
side.
beach
Mm-hmm.
balls. And
Yep.
when one is a high number, that's not good, but it's not
Yep.
HDL, LDL, right?
Right. Right. And so getting a particle test, if you have your PCP run it, it's going to be thousands of dollars. But if you work with a functional provider, we can order them for several $100s. And you can look at all the particles. You can look at ApoB. LP little a is another, more reliable marker for heart disease and risk and things like that. So yeah, I hate statins, try to work around them as best I can. But if you're early in the process and the recommendation is based solely on your age or a generic cholesterol panel, dig a little bit deeper before
Right.
you just blindly succumb to that, because it's going to be difficult to get off. And it's going to create other problems.
And they're such tough drugs. What
Yeah.
they do to the body is
Yeah.
it's almost like chemotherapy in some respect.
Hmm.
It
Yeah. It's
has
hard
such
on the
systemic
liver.
impacts. And again, I know I'm just an
Mhm.
orthodontist, right? But when I go down a
Well, you've
rabbit
lived
hole,
it, it sounds like.
well,
Yeah.
I want to learn everything there is to know about a particular subject. So I
Yeah.
dive in, I go to PubMed and I start reading
Yep.
an article and then I look at the references and I look into that because I want to know. People, this is
Yeah.
longevity.
Yeah.
This is not like if somebody could tell me, give me one topic that's more important to know all the science on than how to live longer and healthier, I'm all
Hmm.
ears. I'll sit
Right.
here. If you want to convince me that knowing how to be a master orthodontist is more important than knowing how to live longer,
Right.
I'm going to debate that as a board certified orthodontist.
Right.
I'm going to debate that one and say, you might have your priorities a little bit messed up.
Right.
So if you know all the literature on everything there is to know about how to move teeth, and you don't know any of this literature, you might want to focus your knowledge a little bit more, because this one's going to hit close to home. And I will tell
Yeah.
you, just as somebody who loves, research, I think the LP little a is I think it's flawed. Because if
It
you
could
read the
be. I mean,
literature,
it's not everything. Yeah,
no,
it's not
but
everything,
if you read
but it's
this,
still more than what you're going to
it is.
get,
It is. In the land of the
Yeah.
blind, the one-eyed man is
Yeah.
king, right?
Yeah.
But the LP little a as a marker for potential, and it's not debating you. I just want to be crystal clear.
Oh, no.
I agree
Yeah.
with everything
I
you
agree
said.
with you. Yeah.
But if you read the studies on LP little a, there's too many variables for them to be able to select out. Right? It's more of a
Agreed.
retrospective that people with LP little a had a higher incidence of heart attacks over a
Right.
certain period of time. And my argument is, how did you get rid of all the other
Isolate that.
factors that played a
Right.
role? Are
Right.
you making a causal effect when it doesn't really exist?
Yeah.
Right? Like the old, correlation and causation, right? Correlation is
Of
not equal
course.
causation.
Of
And
course.
that's where I think LP little a, I'm just an orthodontist. What do I know? There's a lot smarter people
Yeah.
out there than me who say LP little a but I'm willing to bet that in 5 to 10 years, LP little a is not going to be the one they chase after as
Yeah.
much. I think
Agreed. Yeah.
APOB, which again,
Hmm.
really big. And I've been told you can't change it, which kind of
Yeah.
sucks, because my
Yeah.
APOB is
Yeah.
high. So I
Yeah.
think that's flawed too, but for totally different reasons, because I
Yeah.
don't want to believe it's true.
Well, and the same thing happens with diet, with when we try to say, well, you shouldn't eat red meat, right? You brought that up as like, what if we eat some red meat, but not? I mean, I don't think that's the problem. I think for everything in the nutrition world, the answer to everything is the devil's in the details. It doesn't matter what the thing is. If you're eating vegan, you could be eating junk. I mean, if I don't know that I'll ever be vulnerable enough to share, but like I have photos of myself in my early 20s. I was raw vegan. Okay. In some ways I was really healthy, but it didn't work for my body, and it was probably destroying my thyroid because I was eating so much soy, right? But then you have other people that are like, oh, organic soy and vegan and plant-based, and that's the way to go. And then you have people on the flip side, or maybe those same people saying, don't eat red meat. But if we haven't done a lot of studies comparing a vegetable rich, phytonutrient rich diet with red meat, right? We're looking at people who
Right,
are smoking and drinking more than 15 drinks a week and drinking or eating grocery store red meat that comes from factory
right.
farms, and like that is not the same. So it's the same thing with all these cholesterol markers. It's like the devil's in the details. You've got to know what you're looking at and really parse it out to create a personalized plan that's going to work and that what you're actually addressing.
Amen. And one of the things that Jeff Galvin said when he was on, and again, I once had a drive from Charlotte to Raleigh with him to go see a
Mhm.
friend. And so we had hours in the car, and our wives, it was during the middle of the day, and our wives were fast asleep in the back seat because they were
Oh.
listening to us, and we put them to sleep. But in talking to him, he said, Glenn, when do you think obesity became a huge problem in the United States and heart disease? I said, I don't know. He goes, in the 80s, right? When they
Mhm.
came out with the food pyramid. And at the
Yep.
bottom of the pyramid, the broad big base was carbs, right? Grains
Mhm.
and rices and things. And all of a sudden, and that's when he got into the conversation of, when you eat too much sugar and your body can't process it, it goes into the liver, it gets packaged
Mhm.
into triglycerides, right?
Yep.
And now suddenly your cholesterol and all your problems are not related to the meat you're eating. And his
Right.
his contention, and I'd love your feedback on this, is exogenous fat is not the problem in most
Mhm.
cases with cholesterol. It's
Yeah.
carbohydrates play a much
Yeah.
bigger role in cholesterol problems than fat. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
And he would cite Snackwell's as the example. And if you want to talk about the Snackwell's example, I don't think people know what we're talking about.
Yeah, maybe that's dating us. Maybe that makes us
It's
sound
okay,
old.
but it's a great example of
Yeah.
chasing the wrong problem.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, if you look just historically, we're eating as a country less red meat and more carbohydrates and more added sugar than ever. And things are not trending how they're supposed to be trending. Like, right? Like people are heavier, people have more blood sugar issues, more chronic disease. Even if you just look at pictures of people in the 70s, and they're eating beef tallow and butter, and they're not eating margarine and vegetable oil, right? So that's the other big shift that happened around that time.
Right.
So that's the other piece of it. So I would say yes, refined carbohydrates. The greatest increase in non-alcoholic fatty liver disease that we have seen in the last 10 years. Guess what age group it's in? Teenage boys. because of the
Really?
because of the Gatorade and all these corn syrup and energy drinks, carbohydrate rich and artificial sweetener rich carbohydrates that we're taking in. So
And by the way,
yeah,
I weep for the generation that
yeah,
I'm watching in my office. I'm not talking
hmm
about the 10, 12-year-old boys. When I say weep, I literally almost want to cry for what we're going to see in 15 or 20 years
yeah,
for everybody who's living on Monster, Red Bull,
yeah,
Bang. I hate to say names, but all of these
yeah,
energy drinks that didn't exist when I was a kid,
yeah,
where if you were tired, you slept,
right,
right? Or you pushed your way through the day and got to bed earlier that night.
right,
Now it's just part of everybody's life that, hey, you're going to the store, grab
yeah,
me a Bang, go grab me a Monster. Why?
yeah,
Because I'm tired. And my team of women in my practice who are between the ages of 20 and 30, they
hmm
live on these. And
hmm
I can't understand why people aren't going to like adrenal insufficiency. I can't
I
understand why
mean, they
people
probably
aren't
are.
having, are they?
I don't probably. I mean, I have teenagers and they have parents who buy them energy drinks. And I'm like, my kids think I'm, of course, the meanest mom in the world, but I'm like, you guys don't understand how crazy this is that we have parents buying into that this is okay. And I mean, no judgment, but it's so
Oh, we can judge.
damaging.
It's okay.
It's
This
so
is not a
damaging
judgment
at
free
such a
zone.
it's so damaging at such a young age. And it's just wild that they're trying to say that the top priority is, oh, you should cut out red meat. And it's like, that is the least of anyone's concern. At least it's
Yeah.
like a whole real food, compared to all these ultra processed, ultra refined foods. You're seeing increase in ulcerative colitis and colon cancer. Did you see that? That recently came out in an
I did not.
article. I forget what the exact percentage is, so I don't want to misspeak, but it's like 100% or 300%. It's significant in older teenagers and early 20 age bracket. So
But I don't know what
it's
it's
literally
100% of what?
increase in colon cancer, incidence of colon cancer.
That's presenting at that age?
Yes, it's like a huge percentage. It's very
Oh my
large.
gosh.
Yeah,
So
and
all the parents out
they're
there listening,
attributing,
what are
yeah,
they tying that to?
ultra processed refined food.
So the
So,
kids, you go and grab Chick-fil-A,
mhm,
and again, I don't care about names because it's just a
yeah,
representation. So,
yeah,
your busy day, you stop at Chick-fil-A, go grab chicken nuggets, bring it home for the kids. That's
hmm
dinner Tuesday night.
yeah.
Wednesday night, you go out to Pizza Hut. Thursday, right? Lunch is vending.
Yep. And even
Wow.
just like chips and, now they have all these side inventions of chips like Takis and, I don't even know what they are, right? Who even
I
knows
haven't
what's in
eaten any of
them?
this stuff in
Yeah.
ages.
So, just chips and all of those types of, these cheese cracker snacks and like all of these, they're ultra processed, ultra refined carbohydrates, right? They have no fiber, they have no vitamins. They are, maybe fortified with artificial nutrients, which arguably could be even worse for you than not having them there in the first place. So
Right.
if you know anything about how nutrition turns on and off genes, right? We're
Right.
not just born with genetics that don't change like we used to think. Nutrition can turn on and off some of those genes. It's called epigenetics. And that's what those type of foods are doing, in addition to wrecking the liver, wrecking the blood sugar, wrecking the brain with all the chemicals. And so it's that ultra processed food. And there was a study that came out on that recently, linking it to an increase in, I think it was like 15 or 20 different chronic inflammatory conditions linked
Wow.
to eating ultra processed food.
And
Yeah,
before we
it's
change the
crazy.
topic, this is a silly question, right?
No.
Because it's been disproven, as far as I remember, that fiber and colon cancer, right? Increased fiber doesn't necessarily reduce colon cancer,
Hmm.
right? That was one of those
Right.
things. Eat more fiber, reduce your colon risk, and then they said,
Right.
nope, that just it doesn't wash. There are many good reasons to have fiber in your life, right?
Yeah.
Regularity, a whole series of other reasons. But
Yeah.
if I were to eat a box of Cheez-Its, which I'm raising my hand and admitting, that was my weapon of choice. If
Yeah.
I didn't care about fast food. I really never ate a lot of fast food. My fast food was a Subway tuna sandwich, right? That
Yeah.
was my worst fast food,
Yeah.
for the most part. But for me, I'd sit on the couch with a box of extra toasty Cheez-Its. Can I get a
Mhm.
witness out there? Anybody who has that extra toasty Cheez-Its? You can go through a whole giant family-sized box in
I'm sure.
one night of binging, Mayor of Easttown
Yeah.
or something like that.
Yeah.
But if I did that with a glass of psyllium, right? If I
Hmm.
filled a glass of, just picking my fiber of choice here, just right now, two Metamucil crackers, if I was going to use that as an example, or five, right? If I was going to eat a box of Cheez-Its with a thick fibrous drink, would that do any good for me by slowing down the digestion and reducing the spike of sugar?
I mean,
Or
I
at the end of
think,
the day, I'm just putting crappy ingredients in my body and my body's going to absorb them.
yeah, I mean, it's a hard to say how much that's going to undo. I mean, I think, fiber is good in that it creates short chain fatty acids, which are ultimately those prebiotics, if you've heard that term, that feed the
Right.
beneficial bacteria in your gut. So you do need those. And a shortage of those, especially butyrate, is going to be a increased risk for colon cancer and inflammation in the colon and all types of different things. So butyrate and some of those short chain fatty acids are very important. But the reason for eating Cheez-Its, is it's worse not just because of the lack of fiber, right? There's so much more to it. How about the MSG in it, which is what causes us to crave more and more and more and want to eat the whole box, right? There's colors, there's, preservatives, all types of things that are having other deleterious effects on our health. So yes, maybe from a macro standpoint, maybe it's combating a little bit, but there's still so many other reasons from like a chemical and ingredient standpoint that you're still not winning, right? It's still not
Right.
enough to fully like take care of all the issues that come with eating the Cheez-Its in the first place.
So now that we've eaten up, no pun intended, most of our time, there's
Yeah.
no fiber supplement that's going to buy us more time here.
Right.
But with the little time we have left, and I have no doubt we're going to get you back again at some point, Rhya. But my question is, let's talk supplements, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm going to ask some broad questions just for quick
Sure.
answers real fast. It's been said over and over again that you're taking a ton of supplements, you're just creating expensive piss, right?
Mm.
That's what people say, or
Yeah.
pee, whatever you want to call it, right?
Yeah.
Do you believe that? Or do you think, like, for instance, I had a friend who was a world expert on vitamin D.
Hmm.
He would say, if you're African American, if you're a black person, you need to be popping at least 8 to 10,000 units of vitamin D every day because the conversion in the skin isn't happening. And that's
Correct.
why most high blood pressure in black individuals is a function of vitamin D deficiency as part of that pathway. So I understood where
Hmm.
he's coming with that. But do you
Yeah.
feel like folks like me, for instance, I take a boatload of supplements from DIM, my D, K, I take arginine, I could give you 40 things
Yeah.
I take on a daily basis,
Yeah.
including Metamucil caplets, right?
Yeah.
Am I just wasting my time? Or if you've really thought it through, there's valid reasons for taking supplements and they actually aren't a waste of money. And,
Yeah.
and
I
by the
mean,
way, prefaces made by a reputable company that you
correct.
know is
Yeah.
testing. I just want to put
Yeah.
that out there first.
That's
You're not
very
going
important.
to Target and buying vitamins. You're
Correct.
using companies like One Encapsulations. I love them, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
let's go on the assumption that you're buying from reputable companies.
Yeah,
That's the base
assuming you're
level.
buying from reputable companies, I believe that supplements can help fill the gaps, right? So soil quality isn't what it used to be. So, I mean, I have a small homestead and I have farm animals and they can't get minerals that they need from the soil. So how are we going to get them? It's
Right.
it's definitely a challenge and more so than it used to be. So I like supplements to kind of just bridge the gaps. Now, I do think it's easy to go on a tangent and somebody promotes something has really sleek social media marketing and you think you just have to have it, or some companies say, oh, we replace 5 supplements. Probably not true,
Creatine
right?
gummies, baby.
Right. Or this one supplement that replaces your probiotic, your greens, your multivitamin, probably not the case. But I think we have to be
AG1.
strategic. And yeah, exactly. I think we have to be strategic. And I think we have to have data backing why we're doing this, right? You
Right.
don't like it for you, if you're on DIM, if it's because you're on testosterone, then it probably makes sense you stay on that. But for women, you don't go on DIM forever and never check your estrogen, right? Because if you're in your 40s, you want your estrogen. You don't want to just clear it all out. And so it's a little more complicated than just what's the level, right? It's
Right.
how you're metabolizing it through the liver.
And by the way, I'm on DIM. I'm on DIM specifically for only one reason. It has nothing to do with testosterone.
Oh,
The
okay.
reason, and by the way, I'm not an estrogen blocker because I
Okay.
don't want to have a heart attack,
Okay.
which really drives me
Yeah.
crazy when I see people
Well,
getting
DIM is kind of
testosterone.
like, yeah, DIM will kind of help with that though, in a similar way.
Yeah, but I just, I've always been told that estrogen in men has a massive cardiac protective benefit. So when
Yes.
people go on estrogen blockers along with
Right.
TRT, I'm like, I
Right.
asked Jeff at one point, I go, why do they do this? He goes, oh, because they want to give him a heart attack. But DIM for me, the only reason I do DIM, and I think I do 300
Hmm.
milligrams a day, is
Hmm.
purely because they're cruciferous vegetables. And
Yeah.
they've been proven to be anti-cancer, is what I always
Hmm.
read about DIM. It's the only reason I take DIM. And I've been doing it for
Gotcha.
10 years.
Yeah.
Any truth to that, or am I making that one up?
Well, I mean, you could eat cruciferous and still get some of the benefit. Where you need a higher therapeutic level is when you have issues with estrogen dominance. So we see it more in women, but it's common in men. Most of my male clients who are on TRT do take DIM if they're not on an estrogen blocker, because it kind of, there's 3 ways estrogen can be metabolized through the liver. It's kind of like red light, yellow light, green light. So the DIM helps move the red light pathway, which is dangerous and contributes to cancer, to the green light pathway. And so it's safer and it leaves the body more easily. So you do get a more therapeutic effect in cruciferous, but not everybody needs it forever. So I guess my point in saying that is just, that's an example of like, if I put a woman on DIM, it's going to be 2-3 months. And then we have to recheck estradiol and check all those pathways. There's 2, 4, and 16 OH pathways. And so you want to make sure you know where that estrogen is going and what pathway it's going through. So, or same with like turmeric, like, sure, take turmeric, but if you don't know why you're taking it, and if it's not standardized curcumin with black pepper, right? Like those little nuances, I don't know what it's really doing, but does it work like ibuprofen? Sure. The research says it does. So it's worth a shot, but don't feel like you have to take 45 things for no reason. You have a very specific plan, and that's appropriate.
It's so funny because you and I always tell people before they come on the show, and I said this to Rhya before we started recording, I said, this is just like you and me having a cup of coffee and everybody gets to listen in. The challenge with this particular topic for you and me is you're throwing things out so fast that I understand that nobody has any idea what you're talking about. And we're not going to, we're
don't
almost
have
out of time. We're going to come, but like, for instance, turmeric, people, just so you know, it doesn't just stain clothing, okay? Turmeric is really, really good as an anti-inflammatory. And because my documented journey, I'm not an easy liver, right? I wake up every morning, I work out resistance training really hard. I roll with 30-year-olds in jujitsu mats, and I get my ass handed to me. And I'm always sore. I do red light therapy for, again, all the mitochondrial reasons and healing, what have you. I do shockwave therapy for sound waves to help create, stem cells, questionable whether it really works or not, stem cell therapy. But turmeric is a staple. It's the first thing I drink when I wake up in the morning. And there's a company called Pique, Pique, which puts together the black pepper, the piperins, all the other stuff that goes with it, which, folks, if you don't take a black pepper or a spicy pepper extract along with your turmeric, you're not activating it the way you really should, right? Did I say that properly?
Yeah. And you want it to be standardized, have the standardized curcumin, because turmeric is difficult to absorb, but the curcumin in it is still difficult to absorb, but it's the most therapeutic aspect of
And that's
turmeric.
why the Pique the envelopes are really expensive, but they come completely standardized. I dump it in a glass. I make tea out of it, put a little cold water so it's not so hot. And I drink it down while I'm going through my red light therapy. I'm drinking my turmeric while I have infrared goggles on while I'm staring at my computer doing work. So I'm multitasking it. But it's crystal clear that we have to spend more time together, because I absolutely love the topic.
So
I feel like we didn't even do this justice, and we had a lot of fun with it. At least I did. And I'm definitely getting you to an Orthopreneur Summit, because I would love to get you on a stage where people can hear your message. Number 2, we're gonna talk about doing this part 2, and we'll really talk ahead of time about where we want to dive into this. And number 3, most importantly, before we get off here, I'd like you to sort of explain right now, real quickly and easily, if someone wants to consult with you and learn more about how you can work individually with people, which you do, from any number of levels, from just initial, just to like put your foot in the water, to really trying to help them because they have multiple problems. How do they reach you? What's the best way to get a hold of you?
Yeah. If you just want to learn more, I feel like I offer a lot of free information and good content on social media. So I'm on Instagram and Facebook, a little bit of TikTok, but not too much yet. So feel free to interact with me there. I love questions. Bring all your questions. I'm happy to answer things. I do offer like webinars and classes that are free. I also have a free 15-minute consult if you want to ask questions about yourself and are wondering if I can help you. I have both online and one-on-one programs and packages for people with, multiple chronic conditions who need functional testing and a personalized protocols to help really get to the root cause of their issue and resolve it once and for all.
Yeah. If you're not insane like me, people, and actually stay up nights reading books and going on PubMed, this is the woman you want to be talking to, because you're going to shorten the knowledge curve so quickly and help people get to the root of the problem. And I just feel like we're so lucky to have someone like you in our lives. And
thanks. I'm so happy to be here.
Just like Jeff, he's become like my de facto MD for all Orthopreneurs. And I literally, hundreds of people have talked to him, and he's helped so many people from fertility to chronic diseases. And you're just another sort of dovetail of that. And we're going to have you hang around a lot of these folks, Rhya, okay?
Oh, well, good.
So
well, thanks for having me.
I just want to say thank you for being here today, and can't wait to do this again.